You're listening to Secrets of a Bridal Seamstress podcast. I'm your host, Nadine Bozeman. In this podcast, I'm sharing business systems and strategies specifically tailored to the bridal sewing industry so you can build your own modern and profitable bridal alterations business. Join me as I also get to chat with fellow seamstresses and share their personal success stories. I'm so glad you're here and that we can grow together in this unique trade. Hey friends, before we get into another episode, I wanted to share with you about a free private podcast series that we have available for you, all about the subject of branded fitting packages. So if you have ever considered charging for fittings or maybe adding a little bit of additional passive income to your average ticket, this would be a great free podcast series for you to explore. It also includes testimonials of bridal seamstresses who have added branded fitting packages to their own portfolio, and they share about their additional income that they've seen in the years since adding fitting packages. And we're talking about like $15,000 to $20,000 in revenue. So it's a big chunk of change. And I can confidently say that every bridal seamstress that has added branded fitting packages to their portfolio has seen this kind of exponential growth and benefit to their business. So I encourage you to sign up for that free podcast series, and it will hit your inbox as soon as you sign up. And you'll have all the tools that you need to create your own fitting packages and also put together a beautiful investment guide to share these services with your potential clients. So that link is in the show notes if you're interested in tuning in. And I'm really excited to learn what this could do for your business this year. All right, welcome back to another episode. And this week we are with Rose McGregor. She is a bridal seamstress in Western Kentucky. She just told us that where she lives is like the quilting center of the nation. So congratulations, Rose. If you're a quilter, maybe you can hit up Rose for some quilting tips. But she's a member of our SPS membership. She came to our retreat in Austin, and that's where I got to connect with her. And I'm just like so impressed, Rose, with like how you, first of all, how you've grown your business. The story is really cool of how she started the business and how much it's grown purely by like word of mouth, right? And then this past year, Rose has been doing so much behind the scenes to like update the business to attract Gen Z. You know, there comes a point where we have to kind of like shift the way we do things to attract these young whippersnapper brides. So Rose, I'm really excited to hear your story. And Rose has recently moved into a beautiful new space. So we will have you talk about that too. But thank you so much for being here and sharing your story. And I think this is going to resonate with a lot of listeners who are in that, like, okay, do I need to make some changes? Do I make some updates? And you've done it so gracefully. So thanks for being willing to talk about that.
Yeah, thank you.
So take us back to, did you start quilting then in Kentucky? Is that how you started sewing?
So I grew up, my mom is a seamstress and she grew up sewing for people, doing alterations for people, did the whole 4-H
Wow.
thing when I was young. She is a quilter though. She has a business doing machine quilting. I learned how to do that, but that's not really my thing. I don't know. I prefer clothes. So
Yeah.
I went that direction instead of the quilting.
I can't believe it. You're like a second generation atelier though, that she did alterations too.
Yeah,
That is so
yeah,
cool.
yeah. That's what she grew up doing. She did it when she was in high school, and then when her and my dad and my mom got married, just as soon as she turned 18, and I moved. That's what she did for while she was going to school and different things, just to make extra money. So, and then she decided she didn't like clothes, and she liked quilting, and I decided I don't like quilting, and I prefer all these fancy dresses.
So you were one of the 4-Hers.
I was. We used to have a really big 4-H program. Kentucky has a make it with wool competition that's a big deal every year, or it used to be. I don't know so much now, but yeah, I was doing clothes from the time I could reach the pedal on a sewing machine and see to sew. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I've loved it.
Wow, what was your first project that you remember making as a kid?
That's a good question. First project, I don't know. I do remember, and probably because I've been shown the pictures from when you start 4-H and you have like the little, like a cotton skirt with the elastic in the waist, and you'll do like your basic stuff. Like your next one is you do something with a sleeve and then a zipper. And so that's like, what do you start that? Like 8 or 10 or somewhere along in there? Yeah.
Yeah. And it's so funny because like that is just so unheard of now. But I remember I wasn't in 4-H, but there was like a little like youth group, and it wasn't even youth group. It was like there were a few of us at my church that we wanted to learn to sew. So like the pastor's mom taught us. I don't know, it was a little fuzzy. It wasn't like
Yeah.
the best memory, but and it was in the basement of the church. It was like creepy, but I was the only one who was like pumped to finish the projects and like
Hmm.
I loved like, oh, picking out the fabric and like doing all the little things. And I think maybe I forget how old I was. And even before that, yeah, I remember like my mom and I trying to make the doll clothes and stuff.
Hmm.
But when we started doing like Barbie clothes, it was so small and like it wasn't super fun. I think my mom had better memories making it when she was a kid, but like with me, I just remember the frustration. So then I did turn to quilting and I did love that. But like it wasn't until probably like high school, college that I was like, oh, I actually want to get into clothes. So
Yeah.
quilting
Yeah.
was my first love. Maybe I have to head to Kentucky and go to this quilting conference and connect with
We
my
have a
first
whole world of it here.
love. So was your mom probably the most influential person in your life,
Yeah.
in your sewing life?
Yeah, getting started, she was the one that taught me my basics, laid the foundation. And then as I did stuff in 4-H, I was one of those kids. I don't remember what channel it was when we were growing up, but they would have runway shows on TV. And I would like watch those on the weekends whenever I was out of school. I was like obsessed. I'm going to be a fashion designer someday, like super
Yeah.
obsessed with it all the time. I've been the one that buys way more clothes than you'll ever wear in your life. All that. Yeah. It's just over the top with the clothes. So yeah. And then it wasn't until like later I went to college. I thought I was going to do a private design school and
Mhm.
then found out because there was no advertisement, but our guidance counselor was like, hey, did you know our local tech school has a dressmaking and design program? You can get a tailoring degree. It's tailoring, it's an associate's degree. I was like, no, I didn't know.
Oh,
So I get there, and then the guy there would teach you basically whatever you wanted. It was an associate's, not a bachelor's,
great.
but I learned pattern making. I learned dressmaking, design, just anything that you had a question about. You had your actual courses that you signed up for. And then he's like, just ask, what do you want to know? So I had some of the best teachers, the
Wow.
whenever I was in school, whenever I was in
Oh my
college.
goodness. That's
Yeah.
amazing. Is that still around?
No, it is not.
Oh, that's
They
so
closed the
sad.
program due to lack of interest. Yeah.
Yes, that is so sad because that's so
I
cool that you could just like have a real person that you could ask questions to and like have
Oh, he
this
was great.
like mentor. Like, yeah, he'll teach you the basics, but also be able to like lean into exactly what you have an interest in. That is so
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
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 So then how did you get into bridal? Where was
So,
it?
when I started hemming bridesmaid dresses and things while I was still in college, just kind of on the side to make money. And a little while after I graduated, a couple of years after I graduated college, they were opening a David's Bridal in our hometown. So I thought, okay, well, I'll work there until you figure out what you're going to do or until next step or I
I
mean,
need to
what,
start like
yeah,
get like a jar for everyone who says that they started at David's Bridal. Like David's is like training grounds or something. Like seriously, it's like
I had
oh,
several ladies in membership that I had met and didn't even realize until we went to the retreat that we had worked together before.
oh my gosh. That
Yeah.
is so wild.
Oh,
Oh my word,
small
small
world,
world.
our David Bridal world.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, I was with them for about 17 years. So it went from I'll just do this for a little while
Yeah.
until I was like, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
I can bridal.
Yes. Yeah.
I can do this. I can do this. And it just grew on me. It was just one of those things that just grew on me over time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then okay, so 17 years and I'm looking at you and I'm like, wow, I guess I'm not perceiving your age correctly, which is really a compliment too, because I'm like doing the math and I'm like, what? So you were there but then okay, so you were there for 17 years, but you've also been independent, I feel like, for a while.
I have been independent for, well, the store that I have now for a little over 4 years, about 4.5 years. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. I,
So when
I just,
you left David's, was it like what kind of announcement did you have to make to get, or maybe it wasn't even an announcement, but how did you gain clientele moving from the big box store to starting on your own? And then how did you work through, which is so funny because Kirsten Gillies was on the podcast talking about her similar story, working at David's and then leaving. And I don't even
Mhm.
know if she used the name David's or if it was like, oh, a box store. I forget. Whatever. Well,
Yeah.
secret's out if she did. But like, there was a lot that went into that of thinking like, okay, can I leave? Can I do this on my own? And then thinking of somebody else who are probably talking about the same person who's at the retreat, going through that, they went through the same situation of like, how do I know I can actually do this and make money? So like, what was happening? Were you
Yeah.
seeing like all the money that was coming through that you weren't receiving, or what led you?
Yeah, yes and no. It's well, the market has changed. Just like when you're independent, you see how the market has changed. I decided to open my own place during the pandemic in 2020. That was a great idea, right? But I have built relationships with a lot of people in the area that
Mhm.
own bridal stores. One of my main feeder stores, the main lady that owns it actually worked for me in the alterations department before
Wow.
they opened their own store. So whenever I decided to leave, I already had another store that was like, "Yeah, I will send you whatever you want," you know.
Mhm.
And then there was a lady that I had sewn for just right out of college that did pageants. She's done, all the Miss America, the state pageants, all kinds of stuff. So I knew her already. So some of it was just networking and knowing people. And then once I decided to make that move, I just give them a call. I'm like, hey, so it's just me now. If you want to just send them by.
Oh my goodness. So what,
So,
weighing out the pros and cons when you left David's, what was that process like? Were you ever like nervous? Because
oh,
make it sound so easy. Like, well, I just left and told all my contacts where to find me. But like, what were the fears that came up? Because that must have been like, yikes.
there's always the fear of, yeah, will they actually come to me?
Yeah.
You yeah, I think I have these relationships. Hopefully, they'll all pan out. Uh, that fear, I mean, working for a big company like that, you always had them behind you as far as your marketing. There was always traffic coming in the door to pull from, as far as, the alterations department was different than sales, but there was always someone coming in the door. So I didn't have to worry about whether I would have
Right.
a customer or not. So when you go out on your own, you're like, ooh, hope they call me.
And then how did you use David's as like a gauge of how to charge, or how did you figure out like the basics of like your scheduling and when to schedule fittings? And then, because I'm thinking of some listeners who are considering making that leap or even just like starting this season, and like where did you get your prices from, or like those little basic first steps? Did you pull from what you knew from David's, or was it all like starting brand new?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I had a lot of knowledge that came from that. A lot of knowledge of planning revenue goals and setting and how to achieve them, and, like how much you want to make per hour, which means how much you want to make per minute, which means, you have to break
Yeah.
that down.
Yeah.
And then know that when you go into a fitting, they had their price chart. And, I kind of started there. And
Hmm.
then I had been established for a while and people realized that I'm pretty good at what I do. Yeah, I started inching that price up just a little more
Yeah.
and a little more.
Yeah.
Kind of, I had to get a feel for what people would go for in the area. We live in a very small area, very, very small area. And I had to kind of feel it out as I went. I had like a base price, and then I'm like, okay, they didn't give me any pushback to that. I'll go up just a little bit more on that.
Yeah.
And then the
Yeah.
next along, okay, well, I'll add just a little bit more to that.
Mhm.
Until I got at a comfortable spot. People kind of know what to expect price wise. So yeah, it's you have to figure out your demographic whenever you're doing it on your own and setting your prices. Kind of feel around to the other people in the area and see what they're
Yeah.
charging, see what their skill level is.
Mhm.
You know, there's a lot that goes into the pricing and the planning process.
Yeah. And were there other like bridal alteration specialists in your area when you went solo?
A couple, a
Mhm.
couple, not really a lot of competition.
Yeah.
Uh, one lady, we had worked together at David's, and then she had had her own place for a while. But we weren't really any competition. Like there's so few of us. It's like, okay, I'm full. Well, I'm going to give you this one's number. You call
Right,
her.
right, right.
So it wasn't, there's not a lot. No, there's not a lot at all.
Yeah, because even when I started, at the time, I was the only bridal only seamstress in the area,
Mhm.
and then now there's like, no, I take that back. There was another woman, she's retired since, but there are some others that do more than just bridal, and now there's like two others who strictly do bridal, but it's like, yeah, and I feel like we all attract different shops, like we have different stores that are our main feeders and just different
Mhm.
brides are going to come to us for different reasons, so it all does like even out, but it's helpful if like, I think it would have been a perk if I had somebody else to compare methods and prices to when I first started out, you know what I mean? Just to
Oh,
kind of like you said, like, who are you kind of working with? What are their skills? What are kind of their prices-ish? Who are they attracting? You know, so that's definitely
mhm.
a perk. So if you're
Yeah.
listening and you're thinking of like starting, the first step is to kind of check out like who's already doing it in your area and what's working well for them. And, you know, it'll give you kind of this little launch pad of like where to start.
Yeah. There's
So
some.
so did you start from home or did you have a commercial space right away?
I leased a commercial space a couple of months before I left David's.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, yeah.
Okay, that was a huge leap
I,
of faith. Okay.
I thought about having it at home, and then and I do have space for it, and I have a room that I sew in at home.
Mhm,
But I didn't want people coming and going. And
mhm.
then at that time with COVID, my kids were at home doing school at home, and I thought, oh gosh, that's going to be chaos to try to,
Yeah, yeah.
not have my kids in the middle of everything or the dog greeting the customer at the door. Whatever
Yes.
it may be. So
And I do think it's like either your person, I think it depends on the person too, because some people like they love doing it from home and it's like so it simplifies everything for them. And then I
mhm,
think there's like just like another camp of people who they're like, actually, it simplifies it to have it be out of my
yeah,
house. You know what I
yeah,
mean? That's how, because I started obviously at home and I know I've talked about this a lot, but like I just felt like it was cluttering my mind and it would be easier to get out of the house. And I know some people are like, easier, then you have to drive to get to work, you know, and it's like adds a whole layer. But like, so you don't really hear about that too often of how you started with a commercial space like right away.
yeah.
Like,
It's very small, and it was close enough to me, that it was convenient if something come up with a family or whatever. I looked around quite a bit, and it has worked. It's very, I cannot emphasize how small it is,
yeah,
but it has worked up
got the
until the
job
last
done.
year. And now I've like outgrown that space, which, moving on to a new space, exciting.
Yes.
But I started out with something small. I knew how much I had to bring in order to cover that. And then I
Mhm.
knew how much I had to bring home after that. And then I could plan the business around that accordingly.
Yeah.
But I did not want people coming in the house.
Yeah. And it's like you kind of don't know what like when you're first starting, you kind of don't know until you can like gauge even like the first season. And then you can kind of like, you know what your
Yeah.
expectations are now. You know how to like gauge wins or whatever. And so were there any unexpected challenges that came up that first year? Even like when it came to like balancing like the family groove or how many clients you were taking on yourself as opposed to how many like David's would allot you?
I really, in my head, always think that I can sew and accomplish way more than what there are hours in the day. I
I
mean,
know. I don't know what's wrong with me. It's like, actually, I don't sew in like fast motion, but I'm like, ah, this will take me like 2 hours. And it's like, okay, no,
yeah, yeah.
look at your tracking of like
So I
timing.
had to learn to not overpromise. That's what I would take on way too much. And I think that changes from year to year.
Yeah.
The market
Mhm.
changes from year. So I think I've had to adjust a little bit this year because there's been an engagement influx. So I've
Yeah.
had a lot more brides contacting me
Which is
last
so
minute.
funny because I feel like I'm on the opposite side. So over here, the beginning of this year was my slow year where I'm like, okay, I'm definitely feeling that. But then the end of this year, and I can see into 2025, I'm like, whoa, next year is going to be scary because I'm already getting booked for that. So I'm like, I have to say no and set the boundaries now before I get overwhelmed. But one thing that my mother-in-law taught me, because she's a bridal seamstress in Minnesota, and she told me from day one, she's like, set the timer, whatever
Hmm.
you're doing. at the timer. And that was such a game changer for me because even though in my mind, I'm like, oh yeah, I don't know why lining hems, for some reason, I think that they take 10 minutes, but they really don't, but it's like, at least I know that I have it written down. I have my little spreadsheet of how long things, quote unquote, take me because of the timer. So if you're listening and you have not set the timer yet, it's not too late. And that will, I think, just spare you for when you do have these big years. So you're in the middle of your big engagement rush now.
Yeah, it's gotten really busy really fast.
Oh,
A lot of last minute brides. I
yeah,
This year I have had more last minute brides than ever. Of course, you can't accommodate all of them, but
yeah.
that was my learning process too, was to say, no, you cannot accommodate all of them.
I know. Even if the rush fee's a sweet deal, it's like, no, still
It's,
no.
well, the rush does not create any more hours in the day.
Right, right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I
So,
try to like save room in my calendar each month, like for a couple rush because they always come and it's like the rush fee
mhm,
is always a nice little perk. But I've noticed the same thing too. And it's really been like this past month, like so many like July and August brides that I'm like, wow,
mhm.
about this now. Like, okay. So yeah, setting the expectations for yourself for what you can actually handle is number one. How did your family handle the new routine of like you not really having like a 9 to 5? You were kind of in charge of your own hours.
It took some adjustment, and they still, kids are kids. They're like, look at me. I think whenever I was not going to David's to go to work every day, they're like, well, you can just sew whenever you want. You can just whatever, come do what I want you to do right now.
Yeah.
So a little bit of adjustment of getting them, okay, I'm going to work now and you're going to go to
Mhm.
school and
Yeah.
then we'll come back together later. So it's also been good though, because I can plan my schedule around whatever's going on with the kids. I don't
Mhm.
have to have whatever a company is telling me you have to work these days and these hours. I can say, no, my son has a baseball game and I'm not going to schedule a fitting at that time. So that is really, really nice, is being able to control where I put my customers and how my workflow lands.
Yeah, yeah. So you mastered all the things. You filled your calendar in the new space. Now I kind of want to talk about when did you realize? Oh, P.S. Rose, up until this point, she has not had an Instagram. She's not had a website. I don't even know where these people came from. They just wanted you and they were willing to search to find you. So when were you like, I need to make some changes and just streamline or update my marketing? Or when did was there like a particular situation that made you feel like you had to make some changes, or just recognizing like the trends that were going to
Yeah,
require some other?
I think it's recognizing the trends. Last year, in the last year and a half, I swapped over to strictly bridal informal wear. Before, I did a little bit of everything, realized there's not enough hours in the day.
Yeah.
But gonna tackle it, I would rather do the formal wear than a pile of hemming a pile of jeans or whatever. As I was navigating that and learning how to market my business toward only the formal wear people, I'm learning there's a certain group that I would rather work with.
Mhm.
And that doesn't all come strictly off of referrals. Or sometimes somebody might give you a referral, but they're like, oh, I've never heard of them. So I don't know, you know.
Yeah.
But if they see you on social media, or they
Mhm.
see you, somewhere out there besides just word of mouth, you get a different type of clientele. So yeah, the whole social media thing does not come naturally to me.
Challenge
Learn,
coming up this month, so we're going to help you through it in the membership.
absolutely, absolutely. And learn how to use Facebook correctly, not just, post here and there, whatever. Anybody can do that, but how to use it to target certain groups of people. But yeah, over time, yeah, there's that younger group, that 20 to 35 age group. They don't want to call you on the phone.
Right.
They want to find you on Instagram or through a TikTok, or, click a link or whatever. They don't want to talk to you.
Mhm.
Want to see where you are
Yeah.
otherwise. Yeah.
Because
And
I'm like, I don't want to talk to them either. My phone number is like nowhere to be found on the internet.
yeah,
I'm fine with that. I'm like,
yeah.
you can email me or click the
Well,
link or use this booking.
yeah, time word of mouth was fine, but over time things have just changed. People don't
Right.
shop the same. People don't look for vendors for their wedding in the same way as they used to.
Right.
So
Right.
yeah, just one of those things. It's like, okay, well, it's time for me to make a change too.
Yeah, yeah. And that is like that stretches you because I think we get, whatever works, whatever we see that's working, it's like,
Mhm.
well, why do I need to change it? And then the thoughts of updating anything, whether it's like how we book a client or how we communicate with them, or even like how we book like the timeline for our fittings, like any change can seem so overwhelming and like so much because it's just like now like almost like a new skill we have to figure out, you know? So for the website, you had, because it was kind of a cool story, like how did you meet your website designer? Like they did something for you that had nothing to do with sewing, right?
Yeah, so I had attempted to create my own website myself, and that was not getting done. It just
Yeah,
wasn't happening.
that's typical.
We had a group of really young guys that built our new porch on our house, and a few months after they were done, I noticed on Facebook that they had this new website created. And I was like, oh, I'm just going to say different group of
Right.
professionals all together talking about blue collar guys.
Mhm,
And the website just looked good. So I texted him. I said, who did this for you? And he
mhm.
said, I'll give you the information. I don't know if they do what you do. And I was like, okay, well, I mean, they can tell me no, right? So I messaged the group of guys, which I think they're like in California somewhere. I don't even know. I've never talked to them actually in person. And the guy actually said, you know what? I've never done anything for someone that does what you do,
Mhm.
but I'll create something. And if you like it, keep it. If you don't, we'll ditch it and you can move on to somebody else. I was like,
Wow.
okay. I
Yeah.
mean, I'm lost if that's the case, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
literally within a week or two, like, I mean, there was little tweaks and stuff after he sent it to me. I was like, what do you think? But yeah, it was so weird. So the guys that created my website actually work for people who do like construction and blue collar work.
My goodness, that's awesome. But got the job done with the website itself. Like it doesn't matter who their other clients
Yeah.
are. And that does kind of make sense because it's probably going to be like more like interactive. So once the website was complete, how did you start like leading clients to the website? Because before that you were just posting on Facebook? Is that how you'd kind of generate interest?
Post on Facebook. When I get a referral, people would call me or text me or whatever. So I did put an inquiry form on the website. That way I can start filtering through the ones
Yeah.
that I really want to work through and don't want to work through.
Yeah.
No, and that way I don't wind up with somebody walking in the door with something that I'm like, oh my gosh, what have I gotten into? So as people would call or text me, I would say, great, perfect. Do me a favor, hop on my website, take a look at
Mhm.
my brand section. And if you still think we're a good match, send me all that information. We'll get started. It's still going that way because I've only had my website since like October, November of
Yeah.
23. So it's not been going long enough that everybody knows that that's what you do.
Yeah.
But I did, it's more of just telling people, hey, yeah, hop on the website, give me some more information and send
Mhm.
me some pictures, and then we'll get started. And
Yeah.
then there's been a few, not a lot, but a few that's like, okay, well, you're not what I really want. I got my dress off of Amazon and I don't want to spend more than $100. Okay, well, good.
Right.
But it it gets the process done quicker.
Right.
It
Right.
feels
Right.
goes a whole
Yeah.
lot quicker. Yeah.
And then the
Yeah.
more that like your feeder stores just refer out the website instead of like your number, that's going to save you some time too. One of my
Oh, yeah.
feeder stores still has like a phone number on their seamstress list. And so in addition to the website, but like if they text or call, I immediately text and I say like, thank you so much for reaching out. This is actually my personal number. Please head to the website, blah, blah, blah. And I give them like an hour so that if something doesn't work with the link, they can message me back. But then I do block them because it's like, I don't want to call this number again. Like, this is my private number. And I've told the shop that, like, so it's kind of like this joke because I'm like, your girl's going to get blocked. Like, you know what I'm saying? And they're like, oh, sorry, we tried to update it, blah, blah, blah. So it's like, you do have to train your shops. You have to train the brides. Like, you have to like start upstream so that like people know like how to actually contact you, whatever. What other things have you done this past year, or even the past like 6 months to just clean up the way you do things to appeal to Gen Z? more, or maybe something that's even on your to-do list, like you haven't
Yeah.
accomplished?
Yeah, so I have set up more like automated emails. So once I get that inquiry, then I can take a look at it and shoot them an email that has appointment options and, any other information that they might need to know before booking. But all I have to do is plug in like a name and a
Yeah.
date or whatever, and I send that out. I very rarely talk on the phone anymore. Very, very rarely. That takes up so much time.
Yes, yeah.
So, I have all that stuff like pre-made, ready to just shoot out whenever I get an inquiry. I have used Facebook and started using Instagram more, and people will message through that, and then they automatically get that message, hop over to my website. So
Yeah.
it's a matter of just getting the systems in place. I have used Square for scheduling,
Mhm.
like from the get go, but learning how to better use it.
Right, right, right. That is
Yeah,
a great tool. That's like,
yeah, it's a good tool. I think in the future there'll be other things that I'll try. Like you've had Dubsado, you've had information on Dubsado.
mhm,
I think it's a matter of just learning how to automate anything that I can automate
mhm.
in
And
order to
that
make.
does take time. Like, it's not
Oh yeah.
those, kind of going back to that conversation of like the updates and the changes. It's not like we can just do it overnight
Mhm.
and it's like, okay, it's like we're also training ourselves of how to like use the tools and like direct the brides the tools. So it's definitely like a slow season project.
Oh,
Like,
absolutely. And me trying to learn Instagram right now when it
yeah.
is like crazy busy, there's a learning curve, girl.
Yeah. Exactly. Oh my goodness. Yeah. So, I'm really excited. So we're recording this it's May 6th today. I don't know when this is going to air, but we're starting like an Instagram challenge within our membership tomorrow. And I'm super excited because the more and more that I'm growing Sweet Francis business and even like my Instagram account, I'm just so over it. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I don't like going on there. I feel like there's just a lot of like pettiness on Instagram too that I'm just like, okay, how do I get off of this thing, but still use it as much as I actually have to use it to,
Yeah.
like to keep clients or just stay relevant. So that's kind of what we're going to be focusing on this month. And I think that'll be really helpful for you. Like big picture ideas, how to like use it for what it's intended for and not get like sucked into like the time wasting and the
Mhm.
drama and the whatever, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, just
Just
use it.
post for the business. Just use it for the business. I don't
Exact
have time for anything else.
Yeah, so I'm really excited. So now I'm like, "Ooh, I can't wait to see you tomorrow on the call then." Okay, the next phase of the conversation is your big move, which is so exciting. And so we have a circle chat room in the membership. And so Rose had posted a picture and she's like, "I don't know if I'm manifesting." And it was kind of like a joke, like, "Look at this beautiful," it was like this beautiful storefront, like on Broadway or like a main street downtown.
Yeah.
And we were like, "Oh my gosh, that'd be so cool." And then like next thing we knew, like you had the keys to the place. Like,
Yeah.
so I don't even know, were you seriously looking for a new space or did it just kind of happen or were you ready for it? Like, were you outgrowing? We mentioned before you had a
Yeah.
very tiny first spot.
It's small.
Yeah.
I wanted something different from the get go, but what
Mhm.
I've had, and I've been afraid to step out to something bigger and better until I felt really comfortable with, yes, I have the clientele that I want and it will be fine.
Mhm.
And the spaces in the area that I am moving to are very limited, what's available.
Mhm.
And when it is available, you better hop on it because somebody's going to snatch it up quick. And like I had gone down, there's a little bakery downtown, and I had gone down there to grab breakfast one morning. And one that I didn't get had like a personal lease thing on it. And I was like, oh, and they're in there working on it. And I was like, oh, well, that's nice. So I called the realtor that I know that was going to be on it. And she said, that is available, but this one over here is available, going to be available as well. And I was like, oh, okay, well, I'll just get some information. We'll see what happens. And just like everything, I thought, okay, well, the rent's probably going to be ridiculous. So whatever. I'll call them and then I'll go back to sewing where I'm at.
Yeah.
And
But you need to get the numbers. That I'm so glad that
I,
you called because just you don't know until you make the phone call and you get in
yeah,
there and yeah. Oh my
I
gosh.
called around for several different other places I've seen the last year or two, and rent was just so high that it was silly. It would just be silly.
Mhm.
And So I called both and I looked at both. And then it came down to, what's the utilities on this? And what is, like they're literally around the corner from each other. And the one that is on Broadway, the one that I am leasing, the couple that own the building are amazing. And they're like, you can just, move in whenever. You could just pay your lease whenever. You could just, we're going to fix some of these things. Let's do this and let's do that. And like the lady was all for helping out with the design and layout from the first moment I talked to her. And I was like, I think this is meant to be. Like the rent was reasonable. I was like, I think I've got to jump on this. And within 24 hours, I was like, I better make a decision or they're going to give it to somebody else.
Wow.
Happened. It just happened. It's something that I have thought about, wanted, looked, for 3 years now. And I mean, when it happened fast. And that's the reason I do it, because the word manifesting is such a
I
hot
know,
button.
because it was like that a joke. It was like, I'm manifesting this thing, and then you're like, actually, I have the keys now.
Tell you the podcast that I have listened to where they talk about manifesting, and literally at the beginning of the year is the first time I've actually even made a vision board. Like I always talk about things and plan things,
Yep.
and I'm like, oh, this new space. And I jokingly to myself was like, oh, I'm manifesting my new space. And then like the next day I'm like, oh my gosh, maybe I am. It's happening.
That's incredible. And I really appreciate how you were so considerate of like making sure you were in a position to be able to afford the space, to have the clients that were already coming in that you could depend on. You weren't putting unnecessary stress on yourself. And I think sometimes when we consider like, oh, I want a new space or I want to have a professional storefront or something, it's like it has to happen now. And some people do kind of like force that timeline. And if you don't have an already like steady, I mean, I'm super conservative too when it comes to this. Like, I think you should have a couple years of like steady stream of the anticipated clients and like, so you can really plan financially because it can be so easy to like get into a lease and just get in over your head.
Oh,
And
easy.
like, so the fact that you knew, okay, this is what I can make, this is what I can reasonably afford and not have it stress me out, before you dove in, that's huge. And now you don't have the stress as you move in because you're like, oh, I'm already making
Yeah.
this. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I always like to say too, like to help you gauge if you're thinking of like moving out into professional space, to help you gauge, think about how many brides a month you need to take in to afford that rent. And I knew what my number was that I wanted to feel comfortable with because I was so petrified of what if this doesn't work, and even at that time I was
Mhm.
working out of my house for 3 or 4 years, only like 2 years, not even like a year and a half, like full time. But before that, it was like part time when I was teaching, but I knew I only want to have a certain amount of brides, or I think it was like a bride and a half at the time, which is like really low. But
Yeah.
knew what my I knew what my threshold was because of my own psychoses, nerves. And then you just wait it out and like look at spaces, make the phone calls, get in the room because you don't know what spaces look like until you just start
Mhm.
touring them. You don't know what the cost is. Then you start getting familiar with like, oh, this is the average cost of like, square footage rental in my area or whatever. Then you're able to make that leap when the right one comes into play. But it's like if you just rush the process, it can be
It
so
won't
easy
go.
to get stuck with something that you're just not ready for.
Yeah,
Ugh.
yeah. You have to get all your ducks in a row. And then
Mhm.
I'll back up again. I wasn't apprehensive would be a complete lie, because even going into it, I'm like, okay, well, I even have to keep this dollar amount coming in November and December when it's not always busy. And if I did not have the confidence that that was going to fall in place, there's no way I would be ready to commit to something like that, because you still have to pay your own bills and
Yes.
eat,
Yep.
at
Yeah.
home. Yeah, you can't put every dime into that and not make any money.
Right.
Yeah.
And I do think too, especially with your like historic, because where Rose is, it's like this beautiful historic district, like high-end shops, and it's like an experience on that street itself, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think with that, you're going to be able to increase your ticket naturally because I think
Oh yeah.
brides coming in are just going to be expecting to like pay more to be in that space. And I think that's normal when you do move out. And also depending on what kind of space you're in too, if it's an experience in the space itself, it gives you that like wiggle room to raise your ticket. So that's also going to help you, I think, but like just being wise before you take that leap is huge. And when things all just like move together, then there's also that piece of like, oh yeah, this is totally meant to be. And even like how the owners were so easy to work with. Like
Oh
that's
my
awesome.
God. They're a
Yeah.
godsend. I will say, along with knowing like your ticket, like how much you have to bring in per bride, I just added the branded packages this year, the fitting packages.
Mhm.
That has increased my revenue drastically. I was just looking at numbers right before we got on this call, and I'm up like $19,000 from where I was this time last year.
Oh my
So
God.
packages on, if you're not sure,
Mhm.
get paid for your time.
Yeah.
Your fitting time. Just
Exactly. Yes.
do it, do it.
Yeah. And that is something that you could even like start mid-season because
Oh,
brides don't talk to each other. I mean, some of them do, obviously, they know each other, but for the most part, like they don't know when your prices change. They don't know when your offers change. It's like you are allowed to change things mid-season because it's your business. You can do what you want.
yeah, yeah.
On that note, what other habits, not just like, we talked about your scheduling and the pricing, but are there other habits that have changed that have been like working in your favor or like things that you've streamlined, especially as you're considering like moving into the bigger space? I want to think about like the small steps or like the small actions that make big results because sometimes as when we're listening we are stuck in our rut or like we're stuck in our routine and we don't always think about if there is an easier way to do things or if there is like a trick that somebody else uses that makes life easier. So as you've grown, are there some little almost minute habits that have made a big difference for you or
Um,
tools?
yeah, I know we've talked about the streamlining everything. I think that what has been helpful to me overall, my entire career is, and especially in the last few years, being independent, be open to learning something and applying something new, whether it be learning a new sewing technique that makes your life easier, marketing. I've learned to listen to podcasts and learn from people, whether it be marketing in this industry or another industry. You can learn so much from other people,
Mhm.
and just stay open minded because you never know what you're going to hear that you're like, oh my gosh, yeah, that might work. That might work. Let me try that.
Yes.
Let me
Yeah.
try this. Let me try that. And there's so many people, with podcasts and Instagram and TikToks and all these different ways of learning things. There's so much free information out there
Yes.
that
Yes.
being able to just be open minded and
Mhm.
know there's lots of other ways of doing lots of other things, whether it's sewing or whether it's growing the business or marketing or whatever it may be. Just stay open minded
Mhm.
because you know what direction it can take you.
Yeah, I love that. We can't hear that message enough because when we work by ourselves for ourselves, it's only natural to think that like we do things the best way. I know how to manage my time the best way. And so just being open to hear how other people do things. And it's funny because I used your clip for our recent retreat reel and you were talking about like listening to other people how they do things and like how do you manage your time and how do you do stuff like it's
Mhm.
so cool to hear how other people do things and then try to consider to put it in our own lives and even like yes learning the new little sewing tricks that's always fascinating to me too because I'm
Yeah,
like oh how you do this oh like I'm just here in my own little like sewing hole like doing things in my own like routine it's like there's an
yeah.
easier way to do this oh okay cool so being open-minded is big and it takes a little bit of humility so
Oh,
easier said
absolutely.
than
I
done.
for a long time, and I would love to think I know it all, but time you're gonna find somebody that knows more than you do.
Yep. Yes,
Honestly,
exactly, and,
it'll
like,
make your life
being
so
humble
much.
enough to recognize that will take you far, so,
Yeah,
okay, so where do you see what's the name of your business, by the way? How come I don't know this?
it's basic. It's the Alteration Shop.
That is so cute! Oh, and I think it's gonna be so cute on Broadway, too.
Yes, so it has changed from simply that, and now it has the tiny little print that says Bridal and Formal Dress Atelier underneath it. So
Beautiful.
little it's a little fancier for Broadway.
Yeah. But the alteration shop is so cute. For some reason, I thought Rose was in the name, but I love that. So where do you see the alteration shop in 3 years? And then where do you see yourself in 3 years?
So
Ooh, big
two
dreams. But
as hard as it is to believe, there are two different entities between you and the business.
I would love to find another me.
Mm.
Like, I would love to find somebody else that can, and that will stay with me, that can sew and fit and work. I eventually would like to get to where I'm not doing all the sewing and all the everything. I would love to have somebody else to partner with in the business. That is hard. Everybody knows that is hard. And it's also really hard for me to relinquish that control.
Yes.
I'm always
Everybody
like,
knows
oh,
that.
never mind. I'll do it. I'll do it. Never mind. I'll do it.
Yeah, exactly.
So I would love to do that. With the new space, I am hoping and wanting to set this up as a different level of experience. It's a very luxurious experience. And I would like to train the mindset of the people in the area that I live in to want that when they're getting their alterations done.
Mm-hmm.
So, I want people to know that they have the option of a different level, a different kind of experience in the process.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited about that. And it's like the grand opening will be a fresh start. So,
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited for you.
Yeah.
Okay, sewing aside, what do you do for fun in Kentucky? You got a fun.
Well, I don't always hang out in Kentucky when I'm having fun.
Oh, okay. What does Rose do on the weekend? That's what we
My
want to know.
husband and I like to travel. We love to go on vacations and trips all over the place. We love to go to concerts and stuff like that. So I have a little bit of the travel bug. That's what we like to do for fun.
Oh, that is so cool. So you gotta have like the Alteration Shop can fund the travel fund then.
Oh,
Actually,
yeah.
really cool. It's like in your back room, like you have like your vision board, and then to have another just travel related vision board with like a tip jar or something that you like put tips in. You know what I mean? That'd be so cool to like keep that as your motivation. I love
You're
that.
like, help me put my toes in the sand more
Yeah.
often.
Exactly. Like your tips take me to the beach. Thank you. I
Yeah.
don't know how I feel about that. Maybe you can hide the tip jar, but like just to have that visual, that'd be so cool. All right. Okay. So tell listeners where we can find you on
Okay.
the Instagram and what your website is.
Yeah. The website is the alterationshopky.com. My Instagram is the Alteration Shop KY. The Facebook page is the Alteration Shop Ledbetter KY. I don't know if I'll have to change that when I move or if I can change it. I don't know how that works.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's the Alteration Shop KY. That's where you can find me on pretty much any platform.
Hey, okay, we'll be following along for the grand opening too. So if you're listening and maybe you want to chat with Rose about the transition of, getting the website and changing habits, she's available. I'm available. You can reach out to us via DMs on the Instagram. But thank you, Rose, so much for being so honest and just kind of sharing your story, because I think a lot of people, we get set in our ways, and it's always great to be open to like new things, even if they're scary.
Yep.
They take time to learn.
Yeah. Thank you so
All
much
right.
for having me.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. If you like what you heard, please subscribe and share this podcast with a friend. And if you're feeling really generous, leave a review. Thanks, everyone.